one.
Call the meeting to order.
Commissioner Biggs?
Here.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Here.
Commissioner White?
Here.
Commissioner Randall?
Here.
Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any public comments at all?
Rita? You're the only public so far.
Hi.
All right.
Hearing none?
Okay, so last week the decision was to bring in PCI and Acuity to give their presentation so we can listen to them firsthand, and then to also ask any questions that you may have. So the first up will be PCI and Craig Pugh, and Amanda, I'm sorry, your last name? Ricubito are here to present. So Craig?
Thank you. Thanks very much, Beth, and good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to have a conversation with you this morning at a pivotal time for the Park District and planning next steps. Our agency name is Public Communications Incorporated. For ease, we'll simply call it PCI. We were established at about 1962, and we are a women's business enterprise. My name is Craig Pugh, and I serve as a member of the ownership team. I'm the sole male on the women's business enterprise ownership team. And I'm joined today by Amanda Ricubito, a senior account supervisor at the agency. We're about 45 employees strong. And since 1962, our focus has been how do you use the power of communications for public good? Most of our clients are nonprofit organizations. Many are in healthcare, higher education, cultural organizations, municipalities, public entities. And my own association with the agency has been spanned some 25 years with Jill Allreed, the CEO. I serve as president. She is the principal owner of the agency. When we worked together at the Chicago Zoological Society, also known as Brookfield Zoo in suburban Chicago some years ago, operating the park with the Forest Preserve District of Cook County. In intervening years, I had the opportunity to head up cultural organizations that were managed for the park districts in communities of Palm Beach and also Tampa, and then joining the agency to help make sure resources are allocated for the range of our clients. It may sound corny, but we are very much focused on using communications for public good. How do we leave the world a little better than we found it? And we think that the priorities that you have as municipalities, that as a park district, with volunteer governance, a professional staff, a wide variety of constituents in the communities you serve, very complex organizations, and at PCI, we understand that complexity, and it doesn't get easier by just simplifying it with phrases or slogans. You need to understand the complexity. And we understand that each community is unique, even with our largest clients who are national clients, who may be working in 70 media markets across the United States. It's ultimately what is happening locally and what's responding to communities at a local level. And that the range of our clients, particularly that relate to the priorities we understand you have, are communities I think each of you know to a variety of degrees. Elmhurst Park District, for whom we've been focusing on forwarding information about their strategic planning and community engagement. Lake Bluff was a referendum a few years ago. Oak Brook Park District was a future use of land that was being vacated by Hamburger University, and what would be the future disposition of that land. Also, Bloomingdale Park District, a multi-million-dollar referendum for park improvements. Bolingbrook Park District, similarly a combination of renovation and new undertakings, as well as the Park District of Oak Park was related more to issues management. And it's been a wonderful series of clients to have the privilege of working beside, because your authority as commissioners, Jeff's in his executive role, is often based on how well you listen to the community. And with any public relations program, with any communications program, it often begins with sound research or exercises in listening, whether it's interviews with key informants or local influencers, whether it's focus groups, whether it's small community group discussions, or community-wide surveys, understanding what people's perceptions are now and combining with what it's your responsibility to know, the clear sense of where you're going, the financial responsibility to get you there, and marrying the two with timely and accurate information in the run-up to a public decision of whether this is in the best interest of the community to take those next steps after that ballot initiative. I felt the best way to use our brief time together might be in the universe of public relations tools and communications. What are those capabilities that would be called on for a communication support for your initiative? With that, let me turn that to Amanda.
Sure, thank you. And I know you've all seen our proposal, so are very familiar with the elements that we put forward. And I encourage you to stop me at any point if you have a question. But as Craig mentioned, starting with that listening and that research. So we know that we have proposed these community discussion groups. And Jeff is here to talk about a survey element. We know that you have surveyed the community about a year ago, got some good feedback, which is pointing us in this direction, but we need to hear a little bit more because that research is what's going to inform the rest of this cycle, and most importantly, our planning, which will bring us from now until March. And in those groups, so we're looking at about 25 people, maybe about 10 to 12 in each group. So we're digging in deep. Whereas the survey you're going to cover, maybe it's multiple choice, and you can get into this. I don't want to speak for you, but to really hear those quotes from the community members. This is a wide range of people, different ages, representing different aspects of the community, so that voices are heard. From there, we have a full report of, here's what we found, a certain percentage is saying this, we recommend, moving it this way, and coupled with the survey that will join that, to come up with this plan where messages are created that incorporate that research. We're identifying, we of course want to satisfy everyone in the community, but really who are those target audiences? Is it seniors? Is it parents with kids age 6 through 12? We can get very specific or a little bit more broad depending on what we find in that research. And then what are those messages that are going to resonate with each of those audiences? Knowing what the main goal is that we want, what are those measurable objectives that we're going to push towards it, whether it's community supporting one thing or another, but it also may be we want more visits to the website, we want to really build community engagement, we want to see more people talking positively on social media. That's all part of it. It doesn't just exist in a vacuum. So that's that planning portion. When we do have the messages ready, we want to be sure that everyone is on board with those messages here at the Park District. So we say spokesperson preparation. That is not necessarily just the people who would be speaking to media potentially. It's also your frontline staff. It could be the people who are responsible for responding to Facebook comments. It's anyone who has that public-facing view, or even people speaking at farmers markets or any summer events, festivals, parades, as a representative of the Park District. We want to be sure that we're consistent in our messaging and positive and staying on track. And that includes those tough questions. We have kind of a question and answer that we would put publicly on the website, kind of in the FAQs, but we would also get into those tough questions to anticipate, what is the worst thing we could be asked? What are all these smaller aspects that some people might not think of. You want to be prepared for every single scenario and make sure you have an answer for that so you're not caught off guard. You always prepare for the worst and hope for the best in our case. Another element of this would be digital supports. And kind of digital and media are kind of two arms of this right here. So working with your digital team, whoever's running your social media, your website, to see how is it working right now. We did a quick scan of Facebook and Twitter to see what kind of content you're putting out there. And with this plan, really looking at what are the content buckets that are going to help drive the messaging we want, reach the audiences we want. So just to skip ahead a little bit, here's an example of what we did. This is Bolingbrook Park District. So if I'm a person on their Facebook page, you're not going to know that we said, okay, we really want you to focus on these three things: voter information, state of the parks, and staying connected to the Park District. But we know as the content creators that this is what we're hoping people. This is how everything is being written and strategized and rolled out. We looked at the posts on a weekly basis, just to make sure all the messaging was aligned. Of course, there's always going to be fun events, mother, son, fun run, whatever. That's always fun to have, and then interspersed in that mix, we're making sure that we're staying on track throughout our timeline. Because voter information, we want to be sure that people know where to vote, how to vote, what the deadlines are, who else is on the ballot, what other information is there. So we want to be informative and factual, and making sure everyone has the tools that they need. For this particular proposal, they were looking at 2 projects. One that was a direct improvement, and you might be able to see, I know we have a handout, of a cracked pathway that they were hoping to be paved, and then also adding some elements to their pool. So this was a way to say, here's the current state, and here's what, in their case, the proposed referendum would do. And over here, I think the Staying Connected was less factual in that case, and just saying there's so many things going on at the pool. This is such a big part of our community. They would do Throwback Thursdays. You remember being there in the 70s as a lifeguard. We know that you have some very active groups who have those memories. So that's just an example of how we would dig into social media. If you're able to go back a slide, back to that wheel. The other way. Thank you. Okay. And then with media, so whenever there's a decision and anything is in the public record, we want to be sure we're ready with all of our materials, our spokespeople are prepared before anything is even submitted. So that, because anyone can find that, media can find that, so we'd be ready with our materials, which would be a press release. We would have a media list, targeting local papers, you're in Cook County, Chicago papers, anyone who might be interested. Again, thinking about who are the best people to be out there proactively giving interviews, kind of one-on-one, radio stations. And I'll go ahead here. So here are some examples of just some places that we've been in all of the park districts that Craig had mentioned. So the front cover of the Bolingbrook Bugle for their efforts. And all of these positive too. So Daily Herald, WGN, I believe this was Oak Brook. We had a radio interview and overwhelmingly positive. And then of course, after passage of these, there are many articles saying, margin 2-to-1, very positive things. And we also, the way we qualify our media placements is not just numbers, it's also the quality. So did you have a spokesperson mentioned? Did it mention the park district? Did it quote your spokesperson? Is it a positive quote? Does it link back to the website? So there's all these other elements, not just what we might call vanity metrics. And then if I can go back to that wheel, thank you. Another element, crisis communications, and I'll let you jump in whenever. So we always anticipate, again, always anticipating what might come out. And I think when we see these efforts right on schedule, we always anticipate opposition. So we're prepared for that, whether it comes on social media, and social media is often where it comes these days, or vocally another group in the media doing their own efforts. And then
Because it may not be within your community, but at a time where there's a vote, it's often, sometimes an opportunity that others recognize from a national level to intrude at a local level to advance their agendas that may have really nothing directly to do with your own priorities. And the goal with crisis communications is to understand where that kind of opposing view might emerge so that you're able to respond to all equally, whether it's resident or visitor from another place. And simply giving you the confidence to know that when the phone rings, you have a ready response that is timely, that is accurate, and that is consistent, whether it is you, a fellow commissioner, member of staff, volunteer, communicating with the public. And that's what we refer to as crisis communication. It might best be called crisis readiness, so that you're never caught off guard and there are no surprises.
Yep. And then it all comes back into that community listening. We're continually improving as we hear from the community, whether it's tweaking a message, it's not going back to zero. We're hoping that we're on track the first time, but maybe it's tweaking something, maybe it's re-looking at what we're doing digitally or what we're doing in the media. But it's really all working together, and of course our senior counsel right there in the middle, when a group comes out of nowhere or a postcard is sent, that we are able to talk you through it about what those next steps are. If you want to send a mailer out, looking at that language and just making sure everything is consistent. So we are your quality control, if you will. But also community relations, bringing in those elements of when you are out proactively in farmers markets and the like. So again, who are those key audiences and what are those events that they reach? Sure. All right. So how we've laid this out is, so starting now until June, really focusing on those community discussions and getting that deep research. and then doing a lot of the planning, message development, and getting all those materials, the digital plan all ready from now until really when you're ready to go public with any decision. So this will also be in tandem with Jeff's survey as well. So we'll have all the information ready. We're as prepared as possible to go forward. And then really from that point forward, October through March, it is announcing publicly, media relations, community relations, tweeting as we go.
We turn this back to you to invite any questions you might have of either.
How was your success with the other two park districts on their referendums?
If I might on this, I am going to touch wood. It has been 100% to date, sir.
Could I ask, one on the slides when you had the other park districts, I know that one of them in particular had to do 2 referendums. Were you involved in both of them, or just the one?
I think that was Bloomingdale, perhaps we're thinking of?
There have been some other attempts that we were not involved with, but each of these, they did a very successful job of listening to their community. Their priorities aligned, and their referendum passed in each of the examples.
I got a question. So, this right here, the Bugle?
Yes?
This is the cover of the Bugle? What's an ad like that cost?
It's not an ad.
This is not an ad, and I'm glad, Commissioner Schmidt, you raised that, is that there are basically 4 categories in a communications program, and there are that which is paid, which would be banner ads on your website or ads and space ads. There are activities that are earned because you have helped reporters draw attention and write, whether it's on a blog or in a magazine or newspaper, it's earned. It may be shared, which you're pushing out on your social media, or it's owned, the stuff you put on your website. So each of those are examples not of paid ads, but that are earned because you've taken the time to inform reporters about what the priorities are, what the stories are, timely, accurately, and they've chosen to write about it.
Do you think there's still valid validity in the newspapers?
Absolutely, is that there are many who do read newspapers because you have the print version we've been familiar with for generations.
Yeah, I think it's kind of going back that way a little bit too.
Sorry?
I said I think it's kind of going back a little bit that way too.
And there's also the online version of each paper too. So what's likely to happen is the reporter may interview you or fellow commissioner, Jeff, staff. Immediately that article is posted online, and then it comes out in the Tuesday or Thursday edition where it dwells on the coffee table in a print form. But it is an important component. And also with fewer reporters, it's also information that's shared among media so that a suburban issue of a publication might find a parallel in another community.
Is there one medium that you lean more heavily towards? I mean, online, like percentage versus,
It really depends.
Yeah, and I would say, locally, especially for an effort like this, is so important because you're reaching your community. And you prioritize outlets based on who they're reaching. It's not necessarily if it's a print versus online versus a radio, because our media lists essentially encompass all of them. And that's why, within that wheel that we had, media relations is just one part of that, because an effort like this requires so many other elements, because you're reaching people through digital means, or you're reaching them, where they are in the community with attending events. Because you're right, some people are really clued into media, some people aren't. So you want to make sure that you're hitting everybody. So I don't think this is quite as scientific as, of course there's a priority, like, this one radio station, this one TV station, but I don't think it's quite as scientific as it might be.
And in that mix, your website is really the center of your communications universe. And it's not one-way broadcasting of what's in print or what's in social media, but it's building that relationship with members of your community so that they can come back to your website and find that information. And that includes reporters. The importance of having accurate, timely information on your website so that the reporter who has additional questions can find it there, and so that voters planning that ballot measure, the position they will have, will find accurate information on the website too. So partly it's informing, but partly it's also driving people back to your website to get the full story that tweet or that Facebook or that other social media couldn't have carried in full.
Got it, thank you.
People also need to be their own publishers these days too. You cannot rely on the Tribune going in depth on every suburban issue, which you don't. Then you need to make sure that you're an accurate resource.
So pushing out own material, in through pamphlets, postcards, that sort of thing? What is the typical duration that you send it out? You know, how close to referendum? What, you know, how much do you push out that way?
You're seeing most of this happening in that October through March with announcement and media relations, because up till that point, you're determining your priorities. You're making sure you're doing an excellent job of listening to each of the audiences. You're showing how well you've listened, and now you're putting out to say, community, please vote, you have a decision to make. And if you start too early, people can put that too far back in the back burner and again forget it. Too short, they haven't had a chance to address their questions.
Right.
So you look at that timing in those weeks or a couple of months in that run-up to make sure you're out there with the information voters need to make an informed vote.
Yeah. Based on the previous park districts that you worked with, how many times did they push out material like that?
It varied depending on the medium and the resources they have.
Yeah.
For some, it was a robust website,
Yeah.
so it was simply tweaking to get people to look at the website. For others, we folded into this is their current schedule as your publication. You have one on the counter down with the forthcoming programs, and you have another one that will be coming up next. What is the schedule you've already got in place so that you can carry material in your current piece? So by integrating, it's not like you create a voter campaign. It's what are all your communication channels, and how do you take accurate, timely information and make sure it goes where people have built the relationship with you to traditionally find it.
Okay.
Email
So-
marketing.
Yeah, so the biggest piece that we put out that people rely on is our seasonal brochure. So
Correct.
we would have to make sure that information contained in that
Yes.
is available.
And it's a mirror image of what you will have posted on your website, and that it's not just one way, but people have questions, how do they respond?
Right.
And is it a follow-up as a phone call, an email, yet a separate website that is like a microsite that just handles those issues?
Right.
Questions that you can resolve as you get closer to that date.
Okay.
Do you help us design that criteria information?
Absolutely. And what we never want you to be in a position of having to do is to hire us to do things you're already doing well. So we think of it as like a thermostat on the wall. You can dial us up or dial us down, whether it's simply the senior-most strategy of how to use current resources, or whether you need content actually written. Whatever that need is, we can dial up or down.
And a lot of times when we've done a dedicated web page, it already exists within the framework of your existing website, and it's just that content that's everything in one place or links out to PDFs or however that would work.
And what we're saying by content, we simply mean the words you write and the pictures you show. And in shorthand with web designers and graphic artists and others, we'll call it content, but all it is words and pictures.
Any other questions?
Looking at the timeline, getting back to what you were talking about, whether you're pushing this too fast or you're pushing this out, giving too much time in between where it kind of loses interest. How do you feel this timeline is for our situation?
So I think there's two pushes because, again, anytime anything's filed, it's public and we want to be out in front of that and have our messaging ready to go. So I think there's one push in the fall, there's some proactive pushes there, and then it's really after the holidays because people will not pay attention during the holidays. So it's a little reminder, and then really in that month, month and a half before is go time.
So listen, plan, implement. And then there may be some weeks where you're pausing because of those holiday schedules and there's no need to take clear action. But it's only after agreeing upon a plan you have in place that takes you through the March date.
So you feel comfortable with this timeline that it's in with this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because you built in time for the listening exercises, which are of paramount importance. And you want to be able to respond to what you hear, because if the baseline is this, not that, you want to be able to adjust. It doesn't change your overall goals necessarily, but it may change word choices or emphasis because it doesn't align with what the community is saying they want.
So yeah, I'm sorry, to follow up on that. So we have 2 listening sessions in which we invite people to come in. So about 25 people per. Is there the ability to just call it a town house, or excuse me, a town hall meeting, and invite anybody that wants to come and do 2, 3 of those sessions.
That's a different format. We'd want to talk with you in detail about what that means in terms of staffing, but typically it's a smaller group so that you can, people that with representative members of the community and hear what themes emerge. And very often in that small group, we would call it a focus group, but there's not like a room with a one-way mirror. You're standing there and are literally facilitating those discussions. But you begin hearing common themes. And it may be themes that mirror previous survey work you've done, or that you recognize warrant future survey work to make sure it's not simply an outlier speaking, but that they represent a group you may want to go deep. So it doesn't help you quantify, but it helps you detect key themes that you can either say with your collective experience, we're on track, or I have a concern here, we're going to need to verify or validate this through another social survey instrument or communication. Is it Commissioner?
Yep. What is the biggest challenge of a process like this, and like where have you seen things kind of, if something was to go wrong, hopefully they don't, but if they do, where have you seen things go wrong?
Sure, it's simply, you have a plan and stick to your plan. Is that sometimes with an abundance of perhaps enthusiasm, a person may want to talk with those who have different points of views in very casual ways, and it's not necessary because you really have agreed on what the key messages are you want to make sure you're putting out in a timely and accurate way. And you don't want to ad lib from that. And that if everyone is agreeing that these are the most important things we need to say, then let that process be your plan.
So you're saying people straying from the message is where things can kind of...
It can happen. It can happen because a person might feel that regardless of the data that might be coming from surveys, I might know the community better, and that's why I think we should say this. And that can be troublesome because there are consequences to those public positions that may not have been anticipated by the whole group.
Well, and it's not even in sometimes a public setting, although I guess the internet is very public, but not in an official park district capacity. Beware the Facebook rabbit hole. People think they're representing themselves, and you stand for so much more. And just back to your question about timeline, so a lot of the actual activities that we're doing things over here, the bulk of the work, like the real meat of what we're setting our roadmap for, happens now. So this is the deep work where we're really figuring out that plan that's really going to set all of the activity ahead. But then it's just a matter of executing it. But this is really what we all need to come together and agree on.
So I know you said that the timeline works out really well. If you had to shorten it for any period of time, what would you think would be an ideal delay?
Well, you may have pause points where you might see flights of a period of weeks where you might be engaging in survey work, where you're doing some listening exercises on the other side, and you just might want to go quiet during those times. And we can adjust those schedules to be still during those times.
Okay, let me put it in another way. If the board decides that they want to spend extra time contemplating the whole process here, could a 2-month or longer delay in deciding if we're going to use PCI, would that be something that you guys could handle?
We have worked in a shorter timeline. It does mean you have to be absolutely ace-focused on what those priorities are going to be, because equivocating after that point can confuse a community, and the community is going to ask, do you have a clear sense of where you're going? Do you have the financial responsibility to get you there? And anything that raises a question mark over that can mean the community goes, I don't know what's going on. So you want to avoid that point, but we are a highly responsive group.
Sure.
Not where we were before. No plan. But I mean, it can't. I mean, worst case scenario, it can be done.
If you need more time to think on that up front, yes. And that we would be glad to respond to you about what consequences that would have on other stages. Our job is not to give advice, but simply let you know your options. That you are an executive, a director, and an executive board. Here are the options. If you decide this, these are likely reactions or consequences. These are likely reactions for you to make informed decisions of how to use time and resources.
To speak very tactically, community discussions I think would take probably 2 to 3 months just to get people together to do the actual surveys. Coordinating dates is always be a nightmare. This part can probably be condensed if need be. If that's just a matter of putting together materials, that's on us, we can work fast. Spokesperson training, again, it's a scheduling thing. And again, over here, we want to announce when it's time to announce, but then we can go dark until it's ready to really ramp up.
Okay, based on the park districts that you've worked with in the past, is this similar to or a shorter period of time than they've had?
This has been, I think, very baseline and very familiar, and each park district unique because of other items on their schedule, other questions they've had, other pause points they felt important.
So for us, you feel this is an ideal timeline for what
This
we're
would
trying
give you
to do?
time to think and consider, Commissioner, at each key milestone point.
Right.
And you would never be feeling like you're being rushed, but it would be in the rhythm of your regular meetings,
Making a decision by when?
making your decisions so that by the time you're looking at that July through September, you've got a pretty clear plan of what in October through March you want to be pushing on.
Well, and I'm saying making our decision to go with, you guys, I mean, as far as that timeline, like if we have to wait, a little bit of time, we decide, okay, we want to start this process in 2 months. I mean, are we still, or are you saying that the ideal timeline is for us to make a decision, a week from now and start moving? That's what I'm asking.
We truly can work either way.
Right, you had mentioned that there's pitfalls to, there's pluses and minuses for delaying it. So I know it's kind of hard to say what those are because every park district's a little bit different, but general themes of what are the positive and negatives to going any shorter than we're right now.
Right.
I think, speaking just very tactfully, I don't think we'd want to push it any further than June, and we're going to do this discussion first.
Okay.
You'd start to be concerned about pacing after that, and you don't want to ever be feeling you're rushing people through the community engagement sessions and so on.
Understood.
So could that April, June be May, July, and then July be, and then start like November to?
And remind me when the file date is. It
January.
Oh, it's January.
Yeah.
I thought it was October.
I think it's
December.
December.
Like
Then we
mid-December.
can adjust that timeline to make that December. But that's really what we're working up to is the file date.
Yeah.
That's what that represents.
We got a little bit of reading.
Which again gives us like a month and a half before we really have the file date, so that's why it's, to me, this is ideal. And it gives us a lot of buffer zones to discuss and tweak.
We love the buffer zones.
Yes.
We can also work that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
And Commissioner, to your earlier question also, and I've just been so pleased that the groups of park commissioners we've had the chance to work with have understood the importance of the wonderful partnership between board and executive director, and that the decisions they made at every milestone were always unanimous decisions. And that, it's sometimes easier said than done, but it's absolutely wonderful in the message you convey to the community that there's complete alignment. And we know that may take time, because if any one of you has a question, there are probably many in the community who have that same question, and it's really important that when you come down to vote something up or down, you have all of your questions answered, you have all the information, so that you're marching toward the vote, having made a series of unanimous decisions as a board in partnership with professional staff.
Let's see, what you said right there is key. Everybody being